Welcome everybody to the IMEROPEX school safety demo, and our people that are remote as well as in person. Can I have the next slide, please? So we're representing something called PURE, Persistent Environment for Experimentation and Rehearsal. We're showing how you can harness VR and data science to experiment and rehearse crisis situations. Next slide. And why are we doing this demo? We're doing the demo basically to build a better product and get input from the people that observe it, as well as the operators participating in it. And the other thing we're doing is giving you a preview of what our pilot will look like that we're doing in coordination with Houston Community College. Next slide. The VR component of it is what we call full diverse reality, patent pending. It's the integration of headsets, haptic gloves, a bodysuit with a treadmill over a game engine to provide a fully immersive experience for the operators. We're doing this to make things realistic in our scenarios. The theory is the more real is the experience of the operators, the more valid the data coming from the event. Next. And the other part of it is data science. We have a data scientist operating from New York. She's not here today. But we'll be designing experimental architectures so that we'll look at experimental factors that customers think are going to make a difference in things like school safety, countering an active shooter threat. We'll examine them analytically in the course of the scenarios to determine what factors have an impact so we can use that data to make decisions on what to do differently or what to buy. Next. And this particular demo will have two Humboldt Independent School District police officers in full diverse reality engaging in an active shooter. The active shooter will be a AI-enabled non-player character. In addition to that, we'll have students and teachers that are AI-enabled non-player characters. Next. In the demo, the ISD police officers will be operating under three different conditions. One condition is just a situation where they don't have any new capabilities and they're trying to engage the active shooter. In other situations, they'll have facial recognition. In other situations, they'll have shot detection. The idea is to examine the impact of those factors on the mission with their participation in it. And we're generating notional data that Daniel will go into that may reflect how these factors could impact the mission. This is notional data. It's not meant to be taken for gospel. It's just an initial cut at what the data might look like. Next. These are my partners. I run IMEROPEX, and my partners are our Shiny Box of VR developers, OmniSpace 360 that runs the Immersive Dome program here, Mace Virtual Lab, the hardware company, Morphic, our web developer, Ion is our facility here we're collaborating with, Valiant Digital is doing our digital marketing and our video production, and Mo Casey is advocacy out of Austin. I think that contains things. Next slide is basically my get off the stage slide. What we're trying to do is get input from you. There's a QR code you can use to provide criticism, critiques of what we're doing so we can build a better product. Thank you.
Thank you. Afternoon, I'm Daniel. I'm with Shiny Box. I'm on the software team, and I'm going to go into a little more detail about what you're going to see in the next three sessions. This next session we're going to do is, as Jim mentioned, is the baseline. And that means that the officers are going to go into the scenario, they're prompted, all they know is that a shooting has happened in the school, they have to find the shooter and engage the shooter. And here you see picture in picture, the guys are ready in the deep dive. I'm going to give the thumbs up to have them kick it off. And I'll give a little bit of running commentary. So what we're going to be seeing here in the dome is kind of like a drone view. You're going to see a third-person view of the officers. They're fully embedded. They can see through their eyes. They have this full-stack hardware, so they can grab their guns, they can run. See, one of the fellows is here. So they have to find the shooter. Okay, so what we're doing here, we're keeping this very PG. When the officers go away, the scenario is ended. They engage the shooter, they ask to see his hands. In this case, the shooter put their hands up and they shot the shooter. So this is the kind of data we want to collect. Now, again, they're making very rapid judgment calls, so there's no judgment here, but this is all kind of part and parcel of the data analytics and bundle. So the next scenario, we're going to give them about 30 seconds to cool down and reset between each session. The next session you're going to see, we're simulating shot detection system in the school. So they will be prompted that there's a shooting has happened, there's a shooter in the school, and the last shots were heard at some location. Now that is dynamically generated, so the shooter will move around him. They may come in close, they may come in far, but now they've acclimatized to the environment, they know where they're going. When they get a prompt to say corridor near the canteen, they know to make a beeline to that location. If there are any questions at any point, please throw them up. We'll answer them. Otherwise, I'll give the guys thumbs up and they'll go into the second scenario. The shooter themselves is AI, as Jim pointed out. It's got a set of behaviors. We're simulating how a shooter might behave. We're not throwing too many variables into the system because we want to get data out of this. Now, the way we're going to get the data is by controlling the operational parameters and then running multiple simulations with the other dynamic components playing out as they will. So over 10 simulations, 20, 30, 50, those random things that might happen when the shooter decides to surrender or the shooter decides to charge the officers and shoot, that will get smoothed out and we'll get meaningful data. So the guys are firing up right here. Here comes the countdown. Okay, so we've joined the session now. They're making a beeline. This is their 6th session today. So now, once again, the shooter has surrendered, but this time they are apprehending him. As soon as they put hands on him, the scenario ends. So they have apprehended the shooter, they did not shoot him. They knew where he was, they could go straight to him, there was no looking. And that's because the shot detection told them where he was last shooting and he happened to be there. If we were to run this scenario 7, 8, 9 times more, you'd see lots of different behavior. You'd see the shooter running away or he'd be engaging them, he'd be in different locations, and their prompt would be updated based on where he goes. So what's happening is there's no smoke and mirrors here. This is simulating the way he behaves, how the civilians behave. Now, to this point, we haven't seen any of the civilians yet. But this third scenario you're about to see, we will. In the third scenario, we are simulating facial recognition, a facial recognition system in the school so that the authorities are alerted when somebody in the school is there who should not be there. And so the officers will enter the scenario before the shooting has started. So in this scenario, you're going to see the students and the teachers in the hallways. The officers will get a detailed description of the shooter because the recognition system has identified them. They have an image of what that person looks like. But they have to tease through all the students. And the goal is to find him as quickly as possible. If they wait too long, he's going to start shooting, and they have to engage him. So we'll give them a few seconds. While they're cooling off, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that came up, questions that came up today. One of them is, we've got this example school here, but could it be any school? Could it be a real school? The answer is yes. We can take CAD files, architectural data, we can take photos of the school, and we can reproduce to very high levels of fidelity any environment, and we can reproduce to high levels of fidelity features of the environment, how the doors work, which ones close, we can close off wings. So we have huge amounts of configurability for environments. In addition, the physical hardware stack, what these guys are in, this is kind of the full version, this is the full dive unit that Jim spoke of. But when we have lots and lots of operators, a theoretical limit of about 100 humans, not all of them are going to need to be in VR. At some point we'll be simulating somebody at a console, and so we can go all the way from VR down to somebody at a laptop with a keyboard and a mouse. So I think this scenario is loading in right now. We're joining the officers. And you can just about hear there's a chatter of the kids. They have a description of the shooter. Or not a shooter yet. So you can hear shots are being fired. The shooter has started to shoot.
See your head! Let me see your head! Let me see your head! Hands, hands!
So in this case, the shooter is being belligerent. He's drawn his weapon, and the police engaged him and neutralized him. Scenario has ended. Again, we're keeping this PG-13. We're not going to show gore or anything like that. And so in this scenario, successful engagement. What is happening now is that the system has been collecting data for the last 6 sessions we've done today. That data is now being aggregated. When it's ready, we're going to see it come up on the screen here, and we can talk to that a little bit. The guys are being stripped down from the full dive now. They've done a great job today. It's their 6th session. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah. So as you've been receiving feedback from the officers today, and I imagine maybe before, what's the feedback you were hearing in terms of using the virtual environment to gain a training atmosphere?
It's a great question. Yeah. So for the folks at home, the question was, what feedback are we getting from law enforcement professionals about how this helps with training? So the power of this goes to what I mentioned about bringing in a real environment. Schools are allocated an officer who knows that school well. But in the case of an active shooter, most of the responders will not be familiar with the school. So to reproduce this and let them run scenarios, firstly to gain the data that can help mitigate. What should the school have in place? What are the procedures? What should the students, what should the teachers do? What can be installed there? That data's coming. But as the officers are running through it, they're repeating the process. It is training. The scenario is dynamic. So it's, again, they're not learning some kind of script. They're not going through motions. It's different every time. And so building a familiarity with that environment means they can learn the layout. They don't have to be there. If somebody says, the person is in location X, they know where location X is because they've run through the scenario all these times. Now, in our little sandbox here, it's very small, but schools are pretty big. So the power of repetition for the officers to learn an environment, to familiarize themselves, to refamiliarize themselves, to be able to access it at any time very easily, to keep that familiarity up, very powerful. And that came up a few times, and I think we had in multiple sessions from multiple officers, that was a desire. They wanted to get their environment in. And when we've seen this in the corporate world as well, it's the same thing. We want the simulation to be, especially the environment, to be deeply realistic, to the point where when people are in the school or wherever they are, it's familiar to them. There's that familiarity. They train like they're going to do the job. So that absolutely is one of the things that really came out.
Good, because I'd imagine that's difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, super cool demo. And then, my other question is really more about the day. So what are the highlights for the team that's put on the demo today that really stand out? And, we don't need to hear good, bad, and ugly. Let's
Sure.
good.
Well, good. Okay. Well, I'll go first. For me, what I really like, I'm on the code side, so I'm with the software team. I'm a developer. I worked on the software here, on the stack. And so it's really amazing to sit, I sit in my cave and I code away, to see it come together, to see people running through it, to see how the officers have responded to it, to see kind of, the light go off when people go, oh, okay, this is cool. That feedback is something we don't get when we're rabbiting away in our office. So the other part for me is this is integrating a whole bunch of hardware which has not been put together before. We're the first doing a lot of this stuff. especially with the number of integrations, the dome, the Omni, the gloves, the type of headset we're using, the biometrics we can track. So it's been a real adventure, and again, we're laying some new ground. But I'll hand off to Jim. Jim should speak to the broader picture. Oh, you don't know? Let me...
There
we go.
No mic for Jim.
No, I guess the other highlight, the highlight for me is the operator engagement.
Yeah.
The operator interaction, the operator satisfaction with the experience. That's very important. If the operators believe in this, then we can believe in it. And I think that's the most important outcome of this, the operator perspective and their view of things. We didn't know how they'd react to the system. And it's being designed for them, and their operational interaction and their operational consideration of what's happening, and their comments have been very positive. So that was the most important outcome for me.
Great. Anyone else?
I agree with what Jim said. I've been talking to the police officers quite a bit throughout the week, and the feedback from them has been very positive. From going into it for the first time, getting used to the equipment, and then really immersing themselves in it, and then talking about the value of this experimentation to see what works and then what we can train on. That's been a highlight for me for sure.
Great. Mr. Advisor, come on.
I'm very happy with the level of engagement we got with the community and the broader policymakers. That wasn't necessarily going to be an outcome, but it was. And so I'm very, very happy that we've got that awareness out there.
I'm going to speak very quickly to this data. So this shows a sample output of what we've collected over the various sessions. The thing to emphasize here is that we have picked these variables that we're tracking, the time of the average session, the shortest session, how many victims were injured in the course of the simulations. These are buckets, and anything can go into this. This well is as deep as you want. If the simulation is simulating it, we can track it, we can run analytics on it, we can do all sorts of data processing. Jim has data scientists, so this is all at our fingertips. And this is where a lot of the power comes. This is where the data gets turned into useful information for people to act on.
Fantastic. Well, from an outsider's perspective, what you guys have put together here today is remarkable.
Oh, it's a team effort. A lot of people involved in this. Thank you. All right, well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you very much.